All right, so I think I can do this in like 12 minutes. I want to do a quick failure mode analysis on a simple software program so you get a feel for how this might work. This program is going to be a sink that reads data, streaming data, and it writes it to a data lake, and it writes out some metrics. So we're going to take data that comes in a record at a time. We're going to reformat it, do a little bit of validation on it, not in that order. And then we're going to batch it out to the lake, and we're going to write those batch statistics to a metric store. So this should be pretty straightforward. How many failure modes could there be? I don't know. Let's find out. So I created this simple failure spreadsheet. We could list, normally I would do this by component, by like reader, validator, reformatter, batch data, write metrics. Okay. In this case, we're just going to wing it, right? And so what I think we should do is, let's just try it. So what's the first thing? We're going to do a valid data input, right? So we need to get access to the data. So we could have stream not available. That's fatal. And the machine's going to detect it. And why did I put human? Oh, yeah, it's remediation, automatic or manual. The machine, it's going to be, how are we going to detect it? We're going to get an exception. And then what are we going to do? Remediation is we might do a retry. Log. This is a technical failure. All right. So, all right. So the stream might not be available. The other thing that might happen is no permission to stream. I can't acknowledgement. No acknowledgements allowed on the stream. So these are all pretty easy. So these will all have exceptions, and I think they'll be easy to determine. The good news is, even though these are all fatal, they're in the front door of the process. So the odds of losing data are pretty low. I feel like there should be another column here that says, what are the odds of losing data? All right, so the stream is not available. No permission to the stream. No acknowledgement allowed on the stream. What else? I guess that's good enough for right now. And then, so no permission might be like invalid credentials expired, stream not available. Could be two. It could be stream endpoint not available, not found. Okay, so, and then if we look at validate, so what could happen on the validation side? There's really two parts. One is where it comes in the front door, and the other is where we try and validate the business part. So is the data shaped right? Serialization fails, deserialization fails. So that's where we try and get the data into a format that we understand. And this is sort of a tech failure here. And we'll probably get an exception for this. So one of the questions here is, will we lose data? How severe is this? And then what are we going to do with it? The remediation is if the deserialization fails, we might be able to log it, but we might lose it, right? Because we weren't able to convert it into a format that we understood. So we're just going to toss that record on the floor, or does it need to go into a recovery area? I don't know. Okay, that one might be really hard. Then we have business validation fails. So this would be like invalid dates, bad formatting. We also might be missing primary key missing. So some of these might not be as big a deal. Like if we're missing a primary key, that's fatal. That means we're going to lose it, right? And we're going to pick that up with a business rule. And then where are we going to put it? Are we going to log it? Are we going to recover? Put it in an error, stuff in an error. Top it, stream or area. I don't know. If the business validation fails. So you'll notice here I did this diagram. I did validate, reformat, batch, write the data, write the metrics. I'm not going to get any metrics. Are we going to, are we going to lose the metrics? So if we fail, no metrics if validation fails. Now this is a design error, right? So I would actually come out here and say this is a design issue. If you look at the way I put the boxes, there's no way to write metrics out if we fail the validation. So that's actually related to these two. Sometimes you'll add another column where you'll do related, and you'll like bind them together so that by row number or something so that you can do that. All right, so no metrics. This is not fatal, but it's bad. So this is like fatal, high, medium, maybe. So maybe we didn't know if we had requirements to do metrics if we had a validation error. And we know this is super high, right? Because we know if we fail validation, it's going to happen. So the likelihood, I don't know, maybe. And then how are we going to detect? Well, this was by design, right? So this is a technical issue, and it's by design. So that's really a design error. So I should put machine humid by design. I don't know. Okay, so we didn't get any metrics. So let's say we passed the validation and we're going to do the reformatting, right? So now we want to reformat data. So we read data in, we validated it. We want to change its format to fit our use case, right? So if it can't be, so what if the reformat fails? Well, in theory, this shouldn't happen because we have enough data. But this would be bad. We'd get an exception. And the remediation is what? Log it, stuff on error streamer area, I guess. And then what am I going to do with it? Like data lost due to validation or other errors. So this is sort of a secondary concern. If we had data that failed the business rules or failed other things and we've stuffed it somewhere, what is our recovery? So we lost it, right? And detection is we have errors in the logs, maybe. Or, oh no, we have data in the error stream or zone, right? And I don't know what the remediation is going to be. So I'm just going to put question marks. If I don't know, if you don't know, put a question mark. That means you thought about it. And if it's an empty space, it means you didn't even think about it, right? So in this case, I have no idea what the remediation is going to be. Okay, so now we're in the batchy thing. So what could go bad in a batch? The app could crash before the batch is written. So let's do, or we don't get enough records for a full batch. So to optimize this performance and writing into a data lake, we might say, hey, we're going to stream all this data and we're going to write out every 100 or 1,000 records. Well, what if not enough records actually come in? Oh, and this brings up a good one. So here, the batch would fail because we don't get enough data, right? We wouldn't ever write the batch out. What if we get no data? So a lot of these were detected through exceptions and errors and other stuff or other system calls. I don't know how we're going to detect if no data ever arrives, right? So the stream is populated, but no data ever comes in on it. Now what? I don't know what we would do. We could have a lack of activity report. Like you run an alert if there's no records in the logs for a certain amount of time, but that's weird during maintenance. I don't know. So then no data ever arrives. Oh, I thought of another one and now I forgot it. No data ever arrives. And so that's bad. We would never notice. Partition is down. No data on one or more shards. Partitions. So a lot of times these streaming data sources actually have multiple partitions, multiple shards to increase their bandwidth, right? So our data is actually sitting on 12 different shards and we split it up and 11 of them are working and one's not. How are we going to do that? Like we'll see activities in the logs and we won't see any errors. That shard's just down, right? I don't know. And then let's say that, okay, so that looks good. So we get out to the batchy thing. We found a couple of possible errors in the batch. So this is batch. This is batch. This is ingestion. This is ingestion. The stream's not available as ingestion. This is validation, validation, validation. No metrics if the validation fails. I think this is metrics. I don't know. We'll have to decide later. The reformat. So we'll just call this reformat. Reformat. Okay. So we're back down here. I wandered back to ingestion for a couple of things, and the reason I put these in is then I can sort that by the component, right? So I don't have to do all these in orders and go and edit the spreadsheet. We can just do the stream of consciousness thing and put them together later. Okay, so we did the batch thing. We weren't able to, we tried to create a batch. Okay, so now we're going to write the data. So we're going to call this the writer. And in the writer's case, You know, can't, lake not found, the usual. No access to lake. Partition, table not found. What else? Partition file already exists. Can't create partition. Okay, so these are all writer problems. So when we go to write out to a lake, we're going to write it into a file in a certain directory. If that directory doesn't exist, we got to create it. So actually, if the no access to the lake, table not in the lake, so the remediation here would be create the table. And partition. And this would be exception. And okay, right? Okay, so we can't create the partition, we can't blah, 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 we don't have access to the lake, the table's not found, can't write the partition. We do the writer, okay, and then we look at metrics, right? So we're gonna write metrics out. Every time we write data to the lake, we're gonna write metrics data. What if the metrics fails? Metrics fails. Now metrics and stream, lake not in sync. Right? So I had to do a two-phase commit. I'm going to see an exception. I don't know. Can I regenerate? Can I regenerate metrics? Maybe. Maybe I could back into them from the batch. I'm not sure. The metrics might be really important, right? I'm going to write 1 million records to the lake. I would like metrics that show I wrote 1 million records. 1 million records came in. So we actually needed to do, on ingestion, we needed to do records also, right? So in ingestion, no metrics on what is read, and we're going to actually add metrics, right? So otherwise we can't do the comparison. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now in the metrics part, what else? Metrics can't write to the metrics store. I guess that's metrics now in lake and not in sync. Oh, so this would be metrics can't write to metrics. All right. What else we got? I think that's probably it, right? So in 10 minutes, we came up with 22 different failures. Oh, I know. Out of memory. We could be in the cloud, and we could have processes failing. Watchdog, heartbeat, monitoring. We could be out of memory. What else could we have? I guess that's it. Can't provision. Yeah, I think that's good enough, right? So I'm going to call these system. All right. So 24 items. So there we are. We have a super simple process. The goal is to just brainstorm and be like, it might never happen, but you still need to put it on the spreadsheet, right? In the table. Put as much as you can in the table. Figure out how you're going to detect it. And then figure out what your remediation is going to be and whether you can, it's automated or manual. And in some cases, in a fairly complex process, which this one wasn't, you'd have business or technical failures. So that's it. I hope that's a good example of a very quick walkthrough of trying to find failure modes in a small software application. Have a great day.